It's relatively unlikely that you've ever known someone who is a pathological liar in your day-to-day life, or at the very least, it's unlikely that you're aware that that person lies as much as they actually do. Though the research into pathological liars is incredibly limited, they are exceedingly rare, which can make stories of their behavior even harder to believe. We've all experienced a person who is prone to lie about things, and maybe you've experienced someone who lies about things that seemingly don't matter. But most of those cases aren't the same as dealing with an actual pathological liar. Maybe that person was insecure about their social standing and chose to lie to avoid embarrassment. Perhaps they were simply nervous, or maybe they lied because it felt easier than telling the truth. Usually in those cases, though the lying feels nonsensical and stupid to others, it doesn't mean that that person is being malicious. But that is not the case here. Today, we are talking about a person who would lie about who they are, what they do, and why they do it. Someone who fabricated an entire alternate life for themselves, where they're on a hero's journey, overcoming all the odds and trying to make their way in the world, when really, all they do during the day is play video games and waste their own time. A person who was so deeply dedicated to their own lies that they spent thousands of dollars to supplement them, and would go on to force the people they care for the most into waiting on them hand and foot, simply because they didn't want to be held to the same standard as every other adult in their life. When victims of pathological liars discuss their time with them, they are often met with skepticism. For most people, the simple idea of someone spending as much time and energy creating a false existence seems ridiculous. Why would someone lie that much? Wouldn't it be easier to just do the thing that they're lying about? Is a common response. And they aren't wrong. Logically, it would be easier for the person to just get a 9-to-5 or go to school and to go about their life. And because the lies and scenarios surrounding the person continue to expand, the victims will have a hard time relaying what occurred without feeling some sort of shame and embarrassment. They will talk about how this person hurt them, how they convinced them that they were on the right track through more convoluted and strange stories, and people will lose the ability to empathize. How did you not know they were lying? It's so obvious, they will say, completely unaware that everything is obvious in hindsight. They will discount the lengths the person would go to amplify their lies, and how most people are inclined to ignore red flags when they love someone. And there is no better example of that than in today's case. Welcome back to another episode of Dreading, or if this is your first time here, welcome. Today we are going to be revisiting the case of Chandler Halderson and reviewing his ex-girlfriend's time on the stand. We already covered her police interviews, in which she unknowingly destroyed Chandler's alibis and provided direct evidence that he was solely responsible for his parents' demise. And since that time, we've been asked to review her testimony and discuss how long it took her to extract herself from Chandler's web of lies. A link will be left below to the trial footage, as well as to our coverage of the case. That way, if this is your first time hearing about this, you can fully apprise yourself of all the relevant details. I'll also leave a link down below to the lead prosecutor's opening statement in the case, as he is by far one of the best lawyers we've ever watched. If you watch any video linked in the description box down below, let it be that one. It's simply that good. This video, like the majority that we cover on the channel, was widely requested by viewers like you. In fact, we've gotten over 200 emails and comments asking us to cover her testimony, and we felt it was a good time to finally give the people what they've been asking for. As always, if there's a video you would like to see on the channel, or a topic you would like more attention brought to, let me know by emailing me at dreading.official@gmail.com. Though we no longer respond directly to emails, I'm constantly going through your suggestions and adding them to the list of topics for us to cover. As it currently stands, we have about a few thousand topics that we need to cover, so our turnaround time might not be the best, but I assure you if you send it, we will do our best. So, with all of that said, let us begin. When Chandler Halderson graduated high school, he was excited to get out of his parents' home and to mature into the adult that he always wanted to be. He believed that he would be going places, that the world would open up to him, and like his older brother Mitchell, he would be able to really make a name for himself. But by the end of his first semester, Chandler's plans had fallen apart. He had flunked out of college and was forced to move back home with his parents, Bart and Krista, and all he could say for himself is that university just didn't seem to be for him. He placed the blame for his academic failure onto others, telling his parents that it was the setting, then his roommates, then the college itself that kept him from achieving the way he had done in high school. Regardless of the exact reason, he assured his parents that he didn't want to rely on their kindness for too long, and that he would be out of their hair as soon as feasibly possible. He told Bart and Krista that he would be going to a local community college in order to transfer to a university of his choice, and that he would be getting a job to further support that goal. Bart, believing his son, but also wanting to make sure that he stayed motivated to move, agreed to let Chandler stay, but added the stipulation that he was to pay a small amount of rent. Chandler, however, had no plans of doing any of those things. He would eventually devise a plan on how to ensure that everyone in his life believed he was working extremely hard, even when it seemed like he was doing virtually nothing of importance. He was 19, an adult, and his father was busy remodeling the family home and taking care of Krista, who was recovering from skin cancer. Both parents trusted Chandler at his word, and though they wanted him to move on with his life, they believed him when he said he was trying his best, as did his longtime girlfriend, Catherine, who we will call Kat for the duration of this video, and he would of course abuse that belief. Instead of enrolling in community college, as he said, or getting a job, Chandler simply pretended to do those things. He made fake college course schedules, would pretend to be in class online during those designated hours, and even went so far as to complete fake coursework so that his parents would see him working and trust that he was actually doing what he said. In that same vein, Chandler would break off plans with Kat because he needed to study, or buy books related to the courses that he wasn't actually taking, and ask his parents and girlfriend to quiz him on the coursework throughout the semester, further emphasizing that he was trying his best to make up for his academic failure. The very concept that he would lie about something that they were watching him do never occurred to them. So why do it? If someone says they are working hard and every time you see them they're studying, writing, or working, you wouldn't just be taking their word for it, you'd be witnessing it. It also didn't help that the classes he was taking were related to IT and computers, two things Bart and Krista knew relatively little about. He could say anything to them and they would likely believe it. The only issue came about when Bart told Chandler that he needed a copy of his course transcripts for his taxes. Chandler quickly agreed to provide transcripts to his father, despite knowing that they didn't exist. Instead, Chandler came up with a plan to avoid giving the documents to his dad, one that wouldn't result in him committing tax fraud. He wasn't going to admit that he lied, as that would lead to Bart being disappointed in him and potentially kicking him out of the family home. No, he needed a plan that made him look like a victim and made his parents want to take care of him even more, like a little tiny baby. So that night, he created a fake email account for an academic advisor working at the community college and began emailing himself back and forth, providing different reasons as to why the transcripts could not be handed over. When his father would ask about the transcripts later on, Chandler would provide the fabricated correspondence, showing that he had done what his father had asked, but he had been blocked by incompetence. It seemed that he had hoped that these emails would annoy his father so much that he would simply give up on them, that Bart would decide that he simply didn't want to properly file the taxes because it was too much of a hassle. But the opposite was true. Bart was determined and asked Chandler to add him to the email chain, hoping that he would be able to get the results where his son couldn't. Chandler would do so, and also made more fake accounts to the interaction, as if the complaint was being moved up the school's chain of command. It's just Chandler with a mustache. I digress. Each of these new characters was just as incompetent and unable to help as the first one, with Chandler trying to annoy his father into passivity, but Bart was not moved. While this was going on, Chandler was also doing the same thing with his job, choosing to fake his employment status versus actually working. He told his parents and his girlfriend that he had begun working remotely at an insurance firm. He claimed that he was hired on as a salaried position, given his schooling and his obvious intelligence. He boasted about the money that he would be making at this job, telling his girlfriend that he would be able to take care of her financially, and informed his parents that with the money he would be earning, it wouldn't be too long until he could move out. But obviously, that would never happen. Like with his schooling, he created a fake work routine, starting at 6 a.m., and would pretend to be on corporate business calls while his parents were in the home, even though he was playing video games online. If his parents ever sat in or listened closely to the calls, he had roped his gamer friends into the charade as well, leaving Bart, Krista, and Kat none the wiser. The only issue besides the obvious was that this fake job didn't pay, and Chandler was still completely unable to pay the modest rent that his parents had asked for or provide for himself in any capacity. He was solely relying on the charity of his mom and girlfriend, both of whom believed he was working hard to get himself back on his feet. Like with his schooling, he engineered another solution that would ensure that he was seen as a victim in this circumstance, and would result in the people he was blatantly using to continue to provide for him. He was eventually questioned about why he had no money with such a high-paying job, his excuse being that the firm that paid him seemingly put him as an hourly employee and not salaried, and they were working to fix the problem. The money, he said, had to be returned to the firm in the meantime. Every few weeks, he had new excuses as to why the money was being kept from him, and it became clear that Bart, at least, was losing patience with his son. Either Chandler was incredibly unlucky when it came to taking care of himself, or he was simply lying. But again, he had seen Chandler take business calls, heard him lecture about the subject, and he had helped him study repeatedly. It seemed ridiculous that the boy he had raised would go through all that effort instead of going to school or getting a job. But as the lies continued to stack up, he became more and more suspicious. Chandler was well aware that his dad was no longer buying his lies, and began to rely a bit more heavily on Kat and her mother, Dulce. He needed to keep them on his side, while ensuring that they never spoke to his parents, lest his lies be found out. It's also extremely commonplace for someone who lies as much as Chandler did to sow discord between friends and family members, as they often lose track of what lies they told each party. To put it in simpler terms, let's say that Chandler told Kat that he gets paid every other week, but he told his parents that he gets paid weekly. It's a small lie, one that likely wouldn't come up, but if they were to talk about it, it had the potential to expose all of his lies to both parties. So in order to make sure that didn't happen, he tells his parents that Kat doesn't want to come over during the renovations because the dust upset her allergies, and he tells Kat that his parents think she's a bad influence and that she isn't allowed to come over there anymore. He explained to Kat that even though she had a friendly relationship with his mother, that she actually didn't like her, and they didn't want her over. He also told her about the intense pressure he was living under, and his parents were badgering him day in and day out. He once again made himself into the victim, and no one was more convinced of this than Kat's mom, Dulce. She repeatedly told Chandler that if he wanted to move in with them, he could rent-free, and vocally disparaged his parents, believing they were being cruel to her daughter and her future son-in-law. But these were just the start of the lies he would tell. After a few months of lying about his insurance job, he became vocally dissatisfied with the position and announced he would be looking for a new job. Shortly thereafter, he stated that he had applied for a job at SpaceX in Florida and had passed multiple rounds of interviews and had been properly hired. This job, like the one at the insurance agency, was going to be extremely high paying, with him being able to support himself, his girlfriend, as well as purchase a luxury home in the Sunshine State. He told everyone in his life that he would be moving on, and even went so far as to begin looking at homes with Kat, promising her that they would be able to afford whatever it was that she wanted. Of course, this would never come to pass, but no one besides Chandler knew that. They were all genuinely happy for him, and hopeful that this job would turn his life around. But as the date approached, the young man faked a fall down the stairs and claimed that he had a traumatic brain injury that kept him from walking, driving, and taking care of himself in any real way. Oh, God. Okay, all he could handle, he claimed, was playing video games in the dark and sleeping. How convenient. But eventually, all of Chandler's lies would come tumbling down. Bart had called the school that Chandler had pretended to attend, and found out that his son had lied to him about everything. He never attended classes remotely. There was no internship that led to employment with the insurance agency. And for nearly a year, his son had lied to him about every aspect of his life. But instead of telling Chandler directly, he scheduled an in-person meeting for him and his son at the school. What he planned to achieve at this meeting, we will never know, because Chandler would go on to kill both Bart and Krista when he realized that his lies had been discovered. After killing the two people who loved him the most in the world, Chandler set about dismembering their bodies. He then tried to incinerate their remains in the family's fireplace, not understanding that that kind of destruction cannot be accomplished in a standard home. He had killed his parents on July 1st, prior to the 4th of July holiday, and hoped that the national celebration would serve as a distraction for his parents' absence. He believed that their friends and coworkers would think that they had gone to their cabin or somewhere outside the city to celebrate, giving him the entire weekend to dispose of their remains. But that didn't stop him from seeing and sleeping with Kat. While his parents' body parts were in the home, Chandler invited his girlfriend over. He continued his medical charade with her, insisting that he couldn't stand for long periods of time, asking her to take care of him. When she would eventually leave at his insistence, he would set out to discard his parents' dismembered bodies around the area. For the full details, watch either our first video on the subject or our video going over Kat's interrogation, where she accidentally provided evidence that proved that Chandler had killed his parents. Both are linked below. Before we go any further, it's imperative that we move forward with the understanding that Kat is also a victim of Chandler Halderson. Of course, not to the degree of his parents, but this man had distorted her reality to the point where even after the evidence she provided to the police led to his arrest, she still didn't think he had done it. He spent months telling her that he was still going to school, asking her to help him study, and getting mad at her when she tried to hang out with him when he was supposedly at school. He told her that he got a job at an insurance firm, made up other people who worked there that he was friendly with, and gave her his work schedule so she would know when he would and wouldn't be available to hang out. He created fictional conflicts with his coworkers and classmates, and convinced Kat that his parents didn't like her so she would be less inclined to come over, and then went further to say he was offered a job at SpaceX in Florida, asking her to move with him, which she agreed to. This was the man she was planning on marrying, her partner, who she wanted to build a life with. The idea that he would lie about any of those things, let alone all of them, was unfathomable to her. He just so happened to be incredibly unlucky, and when the truth was eventually revealed, she could not fully believe it. In her mind, it was easier to think that the police had made a mistake, that they were falsely accusing her boyfriend of murder than to acknowledge that everything she knew about the man she loved was false. He had lied about his family, his home life, his schooling, his job, twice over, and his health. Everything she knew about him had been a fabrication, carefully crafted to allow him to spend the majority of his day in bed, with his parents and her taking care of him. But as far as she knew, the man she loved wouldn't do that. She believed that the trial would exonerate him, that eventually it would be proven that he could not be behind the murder of his parents, that he had suffered a traumatic brain injury, and all of this had been a misunderstanding. But by the time she took the stand, it seemed that she had begun to come to terms with the person Chandler was. While we may never know for sure what caused Kat to realize that he was the one responsible for his parents' murder, it was likely seeing the entire case laid out before her during the trial. So, with all of that said, let us begin.
Could you please state and spell your name for us?
Catherine Melander, Cathryn, Melander, Mellender.
And ask you to grab the base of the microphone and pull it really close because the fans are on. That creates a level of noise. Your voice is on the softer side, and you have a mask, so being up really close to it will make sure we can all hear. Thank you. Go right ahead.
You go by Kat, correct?
Correct.
Can I call you Kat today?
Yes, please.
Okay. Kat, how old are you?
I'm 21 years of age.
And do you live here in the Madison area?
I do live in the Madison area.
Okay. And do you know someone named Chandler Halderson?
I do.
How do you know Chandler?
We were in a relationship.
Okay. At this point, something's going to happen. The judge is going to ask everyone out here to lower their mask, and I'm going to ask you if you see Chandler in the courtroom.
Before we go any further, we should note how heavily Kat is breathing. Obviously, testifying in court is a stressful endeavor, one most people try to avoid if they can help it. In our coverage of other men and women who have taken the stand, they have attempted to conceal any nerves that they have. But it's apparent that Kat cannot do that. Every breath she takes is a deep one, as if she's trying to calm herself down. And that's likely what is happening. This will continue throughout the testimony, so if you are sensitive to or hate breathing noises, this video will likely not be the one for you. We should also note that Kat does not handle stress very well. In her original videos with the police, she repeatedly stated that when she gets nervous or stressed, she throws up. She also stated that this keeps her from lying, as she gets so nervous that she will probably throw up as well. So her breathing is her body's attempt to calm her down, so she doesn't vomit.
The strange things we're going to do, so the judge will go.
Don't say anything until everybody has remasked. If everyone can lower their masks for a count of 3, 1, everybody within the courtroom, except in the jury box, 1, 2, 3, replace your masks.
Is Chandler in the room here today?
Yes.
Can you tell me where he's sitting and describe what he's wearing?
He's over there with a blue tie and a blazer.
I'd ask the record to reflect the identification of the defendant.
It shall, thank you.
When did you first begin your relationship with Chandler?
In August 2019.
And how did you meet?
We met through a friend.
What was Chandler, what was going on in his life when you first met? What was he doing with his life?
He was attending college. He was living at home and preparing to move into an apartment. Dog sitting quite often.
The only thing true about that statement was the fact that Chandler was dog-sitting often. That was the only way he earned any sort of money, but it wasn't nearly as often as he would have Kat believe. But this is the very beginning of their relationship, when he would have just met her and they began to get to know each other, and he is already lying to her about everything he has going on. In some reports on this case, people will theorize that Chandler had only begun to lie out of embarrassment well into his relationship with Catherine, but that is far from the case. He was lying from the start.
And where were you in life? What were you up to when you first met back in 2019?
When I first met Chandler, I was going to school as well, part of Student Senate. doing shows in the theater department.
What types of things did you and Chandler do in your relationship? Did you go on a lot of dates together?
Yeah, we would grab dinners, have movie dates, just sit at home and watch movies, go on walks quite often, play with the dogs. That was a big thing. We loved playing Frisbee with the dogs. Start shows together.
Sure. Around 2019 and 2020, and then obviously into this year a little bit, or into last year, 2021, how would you and Chandler communicate with each other? Just by calling each other, or were there other things too?
We would talk on Snapchat, text, FaceTime, and call quite often.
Okay. Would you also, so it's text, Snapchat, call, FaceTime? Mm-hmm. Would sometimes you start communicating about a subject on one and then switch to another and then switch back?
Yes.
Fair to say you communicated or you texted a lot with Chandler?
Yes.
And you've seen in this case, probably at some point, printouts of even just a couple of days of your text messages, which are hundreds of pages long, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any sort of relationship with Chandler's family?
Yes.
Let's start with his brother, Mitchell. Did you know Mitchell?
I did know Mitchell.
Tell me about your relationship with Mitchell.
I would hang out with him at the family events, be it like a dinner or for the holidays. We had a game night at his home once with Caitlin and Chandler and myself. Usually see him during family events.
What about, let's start with Bart. Did you have a relationship, or how did you know Bart Halderson?
I knew Mr. Halderson through Chandler. I would be at their home quite often, and he would show me fishing tips, or if I was cooking, him and Mrs. Halderson would be in the kitchen, and we would have game nights quite often. And we would also play Mario Kart together a lot.
Okay.
It's obvious now that Catherine is an incredibly sensitive person, as she is deeply upset and heartbroken, remembering the time that she shared with the Halderson family. It's clear that she really cared for them, and believes that they were good people, despite what Chandler would have her believe. I pause here because her reaction to remembering the family is markedly different than Chandler's. Even days after killing and dismembering them, in his initial interviews, he showed emotion, and didn't even attempt to feign worry about his parents being gone. He said he was worried, but he was emotionless and withdrawn, only asking the police questions to see if they knew he was responsible. In this way, Kat is the perfect foil to Chandler, where he lies about everything she physically is unable to. Where he has no emotion, she is deeply affected by what's going on around her, and unfortunately, this is likely the reason that Chandler was drawn to her in the first place. Manipulative people will gravitate to the empathetic and kind, knowing that they will give them the benefit of the doubt, even when it doesn't necessarily make any sense. Chandler likely mirrored Kat throughout their relationship, making it seem as if he held the same standards that she did, and wanted the same things out of life. Kat was hardworking, kind, and well-liked. All Chandler wanted to do was play video games and shirk every possible responsibility. She was exactly the type of person who would drop everything to take care of her friends and family, and the type of person who would believe Chandler had a traumatic brain injury that meant she would have to take care of him for the remainder of their relationship. And she was more than okay with that. In their text message exchanges that took place after his pretend fall, he would repeatedly tell her that she deserved better, that he could no longer be the partner that he felt that she deserved, and that she should have moved on with her life. That, of course, was not genuine. If he wanted to be that person, nothing was stopping him. He just wanted reassurance that she would never leave him, and she gave him that. In response, she would always state that she loved him, and wanted to be with him, no matter what, that she would take care of him, and nothing could get in the way of that. The amount of emotional manipulation that he put her through is hard to comprehend, because absolutely nothing he said to her was true. The person she thought he was never existed. The life she lived with him was almost entirely false, and trying to trust again after that kind of psychological manipulation is almost impossible.
Some Kleenex there for you if you need it.
I have a handkerchief.
Go ahead and take a moment. And water.
What about Krista? Could you tell me about your relationship with Krista Halderson?
Mrs. Halderson and I, we would text often about what we're doing in our lives and talk about the dogs and Chandler, and like we would talk about recipes and food we want to try, and if I was cooking them something from my culture, she would always be excited and we talk about it, and always talk about game nights and wanting to do a girls' trip to Disneyland together with her, I, and Caitlin.
Okay.
Obviously, she was close to the family, but what she just said here is important. As we stated, Chandler told her that his family didn't actually like her, that they thought she was a poor influence and didn't want her around. Now assess what she just said. Krista and her were good friends, wanting to travel and hang out without Chandler, and for no other reason than not wanting his lies to be found out, he convinced her that that was not the truth, that Krista was lying about wanting to go to Disneyland and see her. Of course, that's not the biggest or most impactful lie that he's ever told, and amongst his crimes, it seems unimportant, but it goes to show just how willing he was to hurt the people around him in order to get what he wanted. Krista loved Kat, and she felt the same. They were close, and he was willing to hurt the person he said he loved the most for no reason. That felt easier than simply getting a job or telling the truth.
You texted often with Mrs. Halderson?
Yes, I did.
Positive relationship, a good relationship?
Yeah,
Did you like her?
I did like Miss Halderson a lot.
Did you like Mr. Halderson?
Yes, I did.
You were over at the Halderson home quite a bit,
Very often, yes.
and that's over in Windsor, Oak Springs Circle?
Yes.
Judge, I'm going to object to leading.
I'm sorry, I need to use my phone.
That's fine.
Here.
Sure. Whereabouts?
Leading questions.
We'll withdraw the question and I'll ask it again. Whereabouts did the Haldersons live?
They lived in Windsor, past that big church. I don't know the road of it, but it was past a big church, right by a pond.
When you were over at the house, did you mostly stick in one spot, or did you kind of treat it like your own home, go wherever you needed to go?
I would go wherever I needed to go within reason.
Okay. Back in June of this year, just before maybe everything that we're going to talk about happened, were you over at the Halderson home and had an occasion to maybe go in the basement?
Yes.
Why did you go in the basement while you were over there?
I went into the basement to grab ice cream and soda to make root beer floats with Mr. and Mrs. Halderson and Chandler.
And this is sometime in, when is it?
June.
Okay. And why were you going to the basement to grab those items? Where were they? They were in the basement?
They were in the basement in the freezer.
Okay. The Haldersons had a freezer in the basement?
Two.
Objection. There's leading questions going on.
I'll sustain. Go ahead and phrase carefully.
Tell me about what freezers the Haldersons had.
They had a chest freezer and then a tall one, kind of like a fridge, but it was just a freezer.
Okay. And did you have an occasion ever to go in the chest freezer?
Yes.
And what types of things were in there?
Mostly fish, specifically salmon, veggies. Sometimes they'd keep ice bags in there.
Was it full?
Yes.
The other freezer, did you have occasions to go in that on occasion?
Just once.
Okay. And was it being used in full?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a screen on in front of you right now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you Exhibit 21 has been received into evidence in this case. I think we went too far, Judge. There was a happy medium there in the second.
No, that's what we discussed.
Is the Elmo on? Fully? It's the light.
There we go. There's a little bit of a glare on that, but is that look to be the Halderson's basement or something else?
Yes, it's the Halderson basement.
And that chest freezer that's open right there, is that the chest freezer that you had been in previously?
Yes.
And was it full when you saw it in June?
Yes.
Was it sitting like that open when you saw it last?
No.
Okay. Was it in that general location when you saw it last?
Yes.
In your relationship with Chandler, was there a lot of discussion about money?
Yes.
Was it important to you that whoever you were dating have a job or be going to school or something?
Yes.
Can you tell me why that would be important?
Just think being self-sufficient.
Okay.
It's either in school or working.
Okay. As far as you knew, in 2020 and this year even, 2021, let's say the spring of last year, was Chandler going to school?
Yes.
Did he talk about that with you?
Yes.
What did you know about where Chandler was going to school and what he was doing?
He was taking classes online through MITC for UW, and it was for an IT degree.
Would Chandler talk a lot about school with you?
Often.
What kind of things would you talk about?
When we'd have tests or homework that we were doing.
Going into in this year, did he ever show you any sort of like work he was doing for school, any projects, things like that?
He showed me some coding he was doing once.
For a class? You said he was going online. Did Chandler ever physically go there as far as you knew? For a class?
I don't remember.
This spring, going into the summer, prior to everything happening, did you believe Chandler was going to MATC?
Yes.
Did you ever see his grades? Did he ever share his grades with you or transcripts or anything like that?
No, he didn't show me.
Do you know how close he was to graduating?
One class away, I believed.
One of the key things about Chandler's lies is that they all came with a time limit. They weren't quick and easy fibs that he only told to get people on his side or to like him. His fake jobs didn't produce real money, so he would either need to find a way to get his own income so that his lies could be believable, or he would have to make up more lies. His fake schooling could only go on for so long, because eventually he would be expected to graduate, something that was obviously impossible for him to do. No matter what exact lies he told or who exposed his lies, eventually he would have been caught. There's no version of events where Chandler would be able to get away with his manipulation, and it's likely that if Kat had been the one to discover that he faked his schooling and lied about his employment or faked his injury, she would have been the one he killed.
Did you and Chandler ever talk about him working with the police at all, with scuba diving or anything like that?
With the DNR.
Sure. Tell me about that.
He told me he would scuba dive for the DNR and then sometimes help out the police through the DNR.
Did he say what he would do for them, like specifically?
Scuba diving, look in the lakes for stuff.
Was this like a job or a volunteer thing? What was your understanding from Chandler?
I believe it was a job.
And did he have this throughout the time you were dating?
During the summer.
This was another thing he lied about. Again, the life Chandler was pretending to live was incredibly exciting. He helped the police when they needed divers to look for dead bodies or evidence in the Madison area. He was working remotely for an insurance firm that, in theory, was going to pay him extremely well. He was also studying for an IT degree with the hopes of moving to Florida to work for SpaceX. His life apparently was a dream, and none of it was true.
Were there ever times where Chandler would go to that job, as far as you knew, or need to schedule time to be there?
Yes.
How would that come up?
He would just tell me he had to be on call days and we couldn't hang out those days, or he would only have select time to hang out or else he'd be on call.
So there'd be times you couldn't hang out because he would say he was on call?
Mm-hmm.
how often would that come up in your relationship?
I don't remember.
Okay. But it came up?
It did.
Okay. Did you ever see Chandler with any sort of scuba diving equipment, oxygen tanks, those flippers that people put on, anything like that?
No.
Did you believe he worked at this dive team job back at that
Yes.
time?
Yes.
At some points in the past year and a half or so, did Chandler get a job with American Family Insurance?
Yes.
And what did Chandler tell you about that, or what did you know about what he was doing?
That it was an internship to help graduate through school, and he would be doing stuff with solar panels and laying out plans for companies, going through American Family and such.
Okay. So it was an internship. Was it eventually a job or something else, like where he got paid?
A paid internship, I believe.
Okay. Did he ever show you any of his work that he was working on?
He showed me a plan on a whiteboard that he was drawing up.
When you say a whiteboard, what do you mean by that?
Like a whiteboard that you hang up in your home or see in school.
Okay. And what was on that whiteboard that he was showing you, if you remember?
A building and where they wanted to place the solar panels and how it was by a highway, so it would be a safety hazard for the direction they want to point it in because of the angle the sun could be blinding the drivers.
Put yourself in Kat's shoes. Imagine your boyfriend or girlfriend comes home from work, and you ask them about their day. They show you something they were working on and talk at length about how they are particularly stressed about this particular project. They go over specific details, show you their previous plans, and explain the issue to such a degree that you can tell it's been weighing heavily on them. Why would you assume that they are lying? That everything they said was an elaborate act in order to get away with not having a job or going to school? Probably not, because that would seem insane. The level of detail that Chandler put into his lies is nothing short of impressive. He made up an entire-ass internship that went along with his schoolwork, stated he was working directly with a company, researched that company and what they did, and what they would hire interns for, then went out of his way to make fake presentations for a fictional company and made fake problems that only he could solve. And when he relayed this to his girlfriend, she was able to remember specific details of this presentation years later during a trial. Again, when the average person hears about this case, they are often confused as to how anyone could believe Chandler. They see his press interview or his police interrogation and determine that he's a horrible liar, but that is far from the case. He was willing to put so much time and effort into his lies that if anyone in Kat's life were to call it out or even imply that he was lying, they would look like the crazy ones.
Did he seem excited about this project when he was talking to you about it?
Yes.
Okay. Did Chandler have any issues with pay at American Family Insurance and getting his paychecks?
Yes.
Tell me what you know about that from Chandler.
That there was something going on with who American Family would go through for payment, that the check went to the wrong address and then it had to be canceled, and then he tried setting up for direct deposit and something happened with that, and then the amount that they had to pay him was too much, so they didn't believe they owed someone that amount of money, and then it just wasn't getting to him.
Because of this issue or maybe others, were there times in your relationship where it didn't seem like Chandler had a lot of money?
Yes.
When you all went out to get food or something along those lines, would it be more common for you to pay or for him to pay, or how would that work?
For me to pay.
Please, no.
Yeah. Sure. 1 second. I'll tell you before. Yeah. You might not have some specific dates, and that's totally okay, but do you know approximately kind of the time period Chandler was working at American Family Insurance?
Believe January until the spring.
Okay. Kind of the same question as before with MATC when I asked you about transcripts. Regarding American Family Insurance, did you ever see any documents, pay stubs, contracts, HR stuff, anything with like the logo of American Family kind of around Chandler or in his bedroom or anything like that?
I did not.
Okay. And in that time period you were dating, 2020 and 2021, while he said he had this job, did you believe he was working at American Family Insurance?
Yes, I did.
Okay. At some point going into 2021, so just last year before the summer, did it appear that Chandler had gotten a new job or was in the process of getting a new job?
Yes.
And where was that job at?
The company or the location?
What was the company?
SpaceX.
Okay. So what's going to happen now is the attorneys and I are going to talk to the judge for 1 second. So some weird white noise is going to come on. It'd be a good second to take a drink of water if you want, but it's going to be about 1 minute, okay? How did you first learn that Chandler was going to work at SpaceX?
He mentioned it while we were on a call.
Okay. Did he have an interview?
Yes.
Okay. I want to show you what's been marked as in this case as exhibits 506. But I want you to look at that for a second and just quickly, you'll notice we've redacted some things. You've seen this type of exhibit before, correct?
Correct.
And we've redacted your phone number out of this, have we not?
Yes.
Okay. Chandler's saved in your phone as kind of a name. What is that name?
Hubby.
And that's just something you would call him?
Yes.
Okay. But are these messages with Chandler and you, looks like back in May of this year?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the first one that Chandler says?
I have a good feeling about SpaceX.
Okay. I'll move 506 into evidence.
Any objection?
Subject to what was said on the record, no.
It is received.
Come on that screen, okay? So we're going to talk about some of them. Just real quick, because it's the first one that we're going to do that looks like this. Your phone was taken by the police and downloaded in the course of this investigation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we're going to try to get the lighting just right, and that might be the trick right there. So in the blue here, that's Chandler, correct?
Correct.
I have a good feeling about SpaceX, and if we're looking at it, the date on these messages is down there. It's also right there, but this one I'll read out loud just because it's a bit hard to see. We're at the 23rd of May of 2020. You say, I'm proud of you. What does Chandler say there?
Thanks. I hope I get a job.
And you say, me too. In general, were you hoping Chandler got this job?
Yes.
Why?
He seemed excited about it. A lot of pay.
A lot of pay? Did Chandler ever tell you how much money he'd be making at SpaceX?
Around 800,000.
800,000?
Sorry, I apologize. 80,000.
80,000? Okay. So after you say me too, we're still on the 23rd, he says, I'll be happy. And you respond, I'll be very happy for you too. You'll get the money you want, the job you want, right? You were happy for him.
Correct.
You talked a little bit, and we're going to flip through some of these that maybe aren't super relevant. As we talked about, you texted a lot. But you're talking about the location and the money, and Chandler says, can you read that one for us?
But I'll be happy with money.
And you say maybe they'll transfer you in a couple years. Was there any discussion about that around that time?
Yes.
And what was that discussion about? Maybe transferring or where this job was?
The job was in Florida.
Okay. And that would take you to Florida as well?
Correct.
Okay. Was it your intention to move with Chandler?
Yes.
And on May 24th, he sends you this message. What does it say?
I have a follow-up interview for Florida tomorrow.
Pausing for a brief moment, let's discuss why Chandler came up with the Florida SpaceX lie. After a few short months of pretending to work at American Family, he knew that the lie had run its course. If he had genuinely been working at the insurance agency and not getting paid, any person would have been deeply dissatisfied with their employment and sought other opportunities. So he began to devise an out, and that was SpaceX. Working for the famous company would mean moving out of his family's home, creating a more stable future for himself, and would make him appear incredibly successful, which is all he really wanted. The vast majority of Chandler's lies seemed to stem from his own insecurity about his position in the world. All he was motivated to do was sit at home and play video games. He only wanted to see and interact with people on his own terms, so getting a job, going to school, and even hanging out with his girlfriend wasn't altogether appealing to him. But he knew that living a reclusive, almost hermit-like existence in his parents' home was somewhat shameful. So the majority of his lies were to counteract that. Sure, he lived at home, but he went to school, had a high-paying salaried position, and volunteered with the police department. He was well-liked in his community, with all his bosses all commending him on being able to problem-solve in ways they hadn't been able to, and more. In his warped version of reality, he was living an incredibly successful and interesting life. However, he didn't have that job. He never volunteered with the police department. He had no money to his name to facilitate the move. He also couldn't feasibly pay rent for an apartment anywhere, much less Florida. And if he did move, his long-term, loving girlfriend would obviously want to come with him. So this lie would have never worked, and he knew that. But creating a more believable lie, or even telling the truth, was less important than his friends and family believing he was smart enough to be hired at SpaceX. How other people viewed him was more important than anything, and he was willing to kill to make sure that he stayed in their good graces.
And as that kind of approached, on the 25th now of May, you're saying, tell me, kind of in an exaggerated fashion, but just tell me what's going on?
Yes.
And what does Chandler say?
Shoot, sorry, I got the job.
And you say, congratulations. You have a discussion about the job in general, and eventually Chandler, the same day, the 25th, what does he say to you?
I have training next week over the computer, and I leave June 11th and start on June 14th.
Okay. You and Chandler discuss, perhaps, I think you said that you were going to move with him eventually, right?
Correct.
Was it going to be right away, or were you going to wait a couple weeks?
Wait a couple weeks.
Okay. And what does Chandler text you on the 25th?
I'll come back every other weekend, hon.
And what else?
And I can send you money till your lease is up and you move in with me.
Okay. The text messages that day end with Chandler sending you a couple messages. Can you read the first one?
If you're positive you want to be with me for the long run.
Was that in relation to you moving with him?
Yes.
And he says, what last?
Because if you're not, then I don't think you should.
So there are a couple different ways we can interpret this message. One, giving him the benefit of the doubt, which he in no way deserves, and the other, where he once again emotionally is manipulating Kat. We will discuss both. The first way this message could potentially be interpreted is that he was trying to give Catherine the chance to break up with him, and hoping that she would. He knew his lies would eventually be found out here. He had given himself a finite date to move by, when he would supposedly start his job at SpaceX, which he knew would never come to pass, and like a coward, he was hoping she would simply break up with him. He didn't want to break up, but he hoped she would have doubts about the relationship, so he would be forced to make up even more lies about why the job fell through. That is the kinder interpretation of this message. The other interpretation is that, like when he would go on to fake his traumatic brain injury, he was trying to get her to massage his ego. He knew she was serious about him. She routinely called him her husband and talked about marriage, and he was just testing her. Sure, he had no plans on moving to Florida or taking care of her and sending her money, but he wanted to dangle the carrot in front of her face because he wanted to make sure she was still loyal to him. You can decide which one of these interpretations is more likely in the comments down below. I would genuinely be interested in seeing which the majority of you believe is more likely.
Did the topic of you and Chandler moving to Florida, was that like something you talked about a lot?
Yes.
Were you excited about that?
Yes.
Did you tell your family?
Yes.
Did you tell your friends?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked in this case. Exhibit number 507. Can you tell me what that is?
A screenshot of the SpaceX location in Florida.
And was this taken off your phone?
Yes.
Why'd you take that screenshot?
I was curious about the location of the company.
Okay. What's exhibit number 508?
A screenshot from Zillow of homes in Titusville, Florida.
Okay. And it's a screenshot, but there's something else in that screenshot in the top right corner. What is that?
Chandler.
How does this happen? This is on your phone, you're taking a screenshot?
Yes.
Are you FaceTiming at this time?
Yes.
And are you looking up, what are you looking up there?
Homes for sale.
In Titusville, Florida?
Yes.
I'll show you, it's been marked as exhibit 509. What's that?
A pool.
And was this another one of the homes you were looking up?
Yes.
When you took these screenshots, when you were FaceTiming with your boyfriend at the time, did you believe that you were possibly going to be moving to Florida and maybe buying a home or renting an apartment, things of that sort?
Yes.
Fair to say these homes you were looking up weren't cheap either.
No.
Did you think you'd be having some money available to you?
Yes.
All right, I'll move 507, 508, 509 into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
They are received. They may be published.
Just briefly, this is exhibit number 507. I just showed you, this is what we were talking about when we said that you took a screenshot of just where SpaceX was?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know prior to Chandler talking about it that they had a location in Florida?
No.
Okay. Exhibit number 508. We're looking at a $699,000 home in Florida. And you're kind of on the phone with Chandler. And is this what a FaceTime looks like when you're kind of browsing other apps while you're on FaceTime?
Yes.
And so is that Chandler in the top right?
Yes.
Were you talking to him about this at the time?
Yes.
Okay. Now showing you exhibit 509. Here we're looking at a pool of another home. Is that Chandler in the top right?
Yes.
And same thing, you were talking to him about moving to Florida?
Yes.
What kind of conversations did you personally have? Not what other people said, but what were you telling your family, your mom, your brother about the plan?
Chandler would move down to Florida and start working. I would go at the end of August after my lease ended. And I celebrated my birthday in Madison. And Titusville isn't too far from where Disneyland is, and I was looking at pharmacy schools in Florida as well.
Did you talk to your friends about this plan?
Yes.
Was there any discussion of transportation or cars or things like that once you got down to Florida?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Chandler had a car lined up for when he got down there already, and I was going to drive my car down.
Did you ever invite your friends that were close to you and say, like, hey, you can come down and visit when we're down there?
Yes.
What kind of things did you talk to them about doing?
Going to Disneyland, Universal Studios, going fishing.
As with his earlier lies about his mom not liking her, this is another example of how willing Chandler was to hurt Kat for seemingly no reason. He knew that they weren't going to move to Florida. He knew there was always going to be a reason why the job fell through, or why they couldn't buy a home, and so on. And yet he encouraged her to look at expensive new homes and plan for a life they would never have. This wasn't wishful thinking on her part. He gave her every reason to believe that within the next few years, they would be happily married, living in Florida next to Disney World, and that they were moving into the next stage of their relationship. And the whole time he did that, he knew that he planned to rip all of that away from her because it was never real.
I think we saw in one of those prior texts that the SpaceX job was supposed to begin mid-June. Was that your understanding of the timing?
Yes.
Around the time it was supposed to start, did something happen that caused a delay?
Yes.
What happened?
Mitch went to the hospital.
Chandler's brother? And he's testified and told everyone kind of about it. But in general, what was your understanding of what was going on?
His sugar levels were very high, and he had to be there for a couple days.
What did Chandler, did he tell you anything about whether that was going to delay SpaceX, or what the relationship between those two things are, Mitchell's illness and SpaceX?
He didn't want to leave while Mitch was ill.
Mitch was in the hospital for a couple days?
Yes.
Okay. At that point, did Chandler tell you, or did you know of any time he was supposed to now start SpaceX?
I don't remember.
Okay. Was it delayed?
Yes.
After Mitchell's hospitalization, did anything else happen that caused a delay in SpaceX?
I ended up going to the urgent care as well, and then Chandler fell.
Okay. Chandler was in the hospital?
Yes.
Okay. What did you know about Chandler falling?
He was running and slipped down the stairs, and then fell pretty hard and hit his head.
Did Chandler talk to you about his injury?
Yes.
What kind of symptoms was he reporting that he was feeling after that fall?
Tingles in his legs, sensitivity to light, severe headaches, weakness.
Was Chandler able to physically do normal things around that time?
No.
What do you mean by that?
He had a hard time lifting things and quite often would get lightheaded.
We've already established that this head injury was fake. Even when Chandler put on his best performance in the emergency room, the doctors examining him determined that he was mostly unharmed and that he hadn't fallen hard enough to have a concussion. It was only after he insisted that he was given a neck brace, even though the doctors advised he didn't need it. He then proceeded to tell everyone in his life that he needed a neck brace and refused to take it off. But think about all of the things she just listed that he couldn't do. He was already unemployed, not going to school, and spending the majority of his time online gaming with friends. But now he claims that even small amounts of light hurt him, that he cannot lift anything without getting lightheaded, and that even standing leaves his legs feeling tingly and numb. He made it so it seemed that any amount of effort strained him, like even asking him to get out of bed and turn on the lights would be a huge undertaking. He wasn't looking to improve his circumstances, to try and make a name for himself and eventually achieve everything he had set out to do. He didn't want to build a life with Kat, based on mutual effort and achievement. He wanted to be taken care of. He wanted his parents to pay for all of his life expenses. And when they eventually stopped doing that, he wanted his girlfriend to take their place. He had spent the entire relationship lying to Kat about who he was, what he wanted from life, and his plans for the future. He made himself seem like the ideal partner to her, someone who would match her enthusiasm and life goals, and would work alongside her to buy a home and support their future family. But that was never the case. He never attempted to get even an entry-level position, or live up to the standards that Kat held, because he never cared about that. All he wanted was to be taken care of.
Could he carry heavy things from what you observed or knew?
No.
Could he drive long distances, things of that sort?
No.
Was he able to travel?
No.
Why do you know that, or why do you say that?
Because of the head injury and wearing the neck brace.
Okay. I'm going to show you a couple exhibits marked 511. Tell me what 511 is.
Chandler in the emergency room.
Okay. And He's kind of got his hat over his head there.
Yes.
Who sent you? Did you see this photo eventually?
Yes.
How'd you get that photo?
It was sent to me.
Do you know who sent it to you?
I believe it was Chandler or his mother.
Okay. What's 512?
Chandler with Mr. Halderson and Mitch during the Father's Day brunch.
Okay. And he's wearing the collar there?
Yes.
513, another photo of Chandler in the collar?
Yes.
All right, move 511, 12, and 13 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
They are received. They may be published.
Thank you, Judge. Just so we're all looking at the same thing, you said this is a photograph that was sent to you, Chandler, in the hospital, 511? Correct?
Correct.
Sorry, we got to do it twice, kind of, that's how it works. 512, photograph of, that's Chandler on the left side, correct?
Correct.
And then in the middle, is that Mr. Halderson?
Correct.
And on the right, is that Mitchell?
Correct.
And that's, where is that photo taken, do you know?
In the living room by the kitchen.
Okay. In 513, another photograph of Chandler wearing that neck brace?
Correct.
Okay. What were you aware of in terms of like what the prognosis was for his injuries? Like what was going to happen to him or what was going on?
He had a concussion, light sensitivity, and tingling in his legs.
Was it going to get better?
I guess at this point, I'm going to object.
I need you to use the microphone.
I'll withdraw the question, the defense object. Did Chandler tell you if he was going to get better or the symptoms were improving around that time?
No.
Was there any discussion about how the concussion and the injury was going to affect SpaceX?
He wouldn't be able to travel down there.
Tell me about anything you remember about that type of discussion.
Can you be more specific, please?
Yeah. What did Chandler specifically tell you about why he couldn't travel?
Because he was wearing the neck brace and he had a concussion, so he shouldn't be flying.
Same question as before about American Family and MATC. Did you ever see anything around Chandler's room, on his phone, any documents, records with the SpaceX or Tesla logo or anything like that?
No.
Talked a little bit about houses and things of that sort. Were you aware at any point if Chandler had rented an apartment?
Yes.
And tell me about that.
It was a 2-bedroom apartment, and he put a down payment for it. And there was a little dog park, so I could bring my dog Chewbacca down.
Okay. How did you know about this apartment?
Chandler sent me a link.
Okay. Did he tell you whether he was just looking at it or if he had actually rented it?
That he rented it.
Okay. Did you yourself see a lease of any sort?
No.
Did you ever sign a lease?
No.
Is your only connection with this apartment is looking at the listing that was sent to you?
Correct.
We're going to start talking about events starting on June 30th and kind of all the way through July 8th at this point. And I think I'm going to let some of your messages guide our conversation, so I'm going to be walking back and forth quite a bit. But I'm going to show you what's been marked in this case as exhibit number 514. Just briefly, could you just page through that and tell us kind of what dates these text messages are from?
They're all on June 30th?
June 30th of 2021, right?
Correct.
All right. And these are the messages between you and Chandler?
Correct.
I'll move 514 into evidence.
Any objection?
I'll bring up the same objection from the sidebar, but otherwise, no.
All right. And based upon the same ruling, they are received and they may be shown.
I'm going to start showing them, and I'm going to ask for some context because we're picking up, obviously, in the middle of thousands of pages of messages, maybe. But the first message is a message from you. To be honest, it's getting to the point where I want to text your mom directly. What was this about on June 30th, 3:18 in the afternoon?
About him being grounded and not being able to see me or hang out.
What was your understanding at that time of what was going on from Chandler? What did he tell you? He was grounded?
Yes.
Okay. Were you wanting to see him?
Yes.
And what did he tell you about whether he could see you or not?
He couldn't.
Okay. Because of what?
Because I wasn't allowed over.
Okay. You communicated with Krista a lot, right?
Yes.
When you say that, was Chandler telling you that, or did you actually hear that from Krista or Bart?
From Chandler.
Okay. And you say, it's getting to the point where I want to text your mom directly, and Chandler says, can you read that for me?
It's fine, B. That'll only piss them off more.
And what does he say?
This weekend will be.
As established, it was important for Chandler that Kat didn't talk to his parents. He didn't want them getting along, because that would mean that they could talk about his life and what he was doing, and potentially realize that he'd been lying to all of them. Mind you, he wasn't grounded. He just didn't want to see Kat for whatever reason, but he was never willing to simply say that. There was always something getting in the way of them spending time together, something that he would present as being endlessly frustrating to him. His parents, his work, his job, school, his volunteer work, what have you. He was never willing to communicate that he wanted time alone from her, because then he might not seem like a good boyfriend.
That weekend was the 4th of July weekend coming up, right?
Correct.
You say, now we're still June 30th, we're about 3:19 in the afternoon, you say, okay. And he says what?
Thanks, though.
And then on June 30th, you send this message next. What does that say?
We're not going to the cabin, right?
So in the realm of messages where the cabin, the first time the jury's seen that, how did this come up, or what was going on where you sent this message?
I was under the impression that Mr. and Mrs. Halderson were going up to the cabin for the 4th of July weekend.
Was that conversations or like over the phone or in person you'd had with Chandler, or was that?
Over the phone.
Okay. And you ask, we're not going to the cabin, are we? What does Chandler say?
No.
You say, I can ask if we can go to the farm, right?
Correct.
And that ended up coming to fruition. You did that.
Yes.
Okay. You read that last message you sent?
That way we can say my mom can care for you, since they have a lot of stuff here that they use for Mike and Papa.
Your mom and Cress testified. Who are Mike and Papa in general, and what did that mean that there was stuff there for them?
Mike is Cress's brother, and Papa is her father. Papa is elderly. He is over 90 years of age. And Mike is wheelchair bound and needs help going to the restroom, and overall my mom helps take care of them.
Okay. What kind of stuff were you talking about that there was stuff there?
Walkers. If he needed one of those stools that you put over the toilet so an elderly person can sit down and they don't have to squat so low since it's hard for their knees.
Okay. Was it your impression that Chandler would be assisted by some of those things?
No.
Why did you say that there was stuff there for them?
So we'd be able to hang out since his mom was very concerned about his injury.
Okay. The next day, Thursday, July 1st, you worked that day?
Can you repeat the date?
Sure, Thursday, July 1st, so before the 4th of July weekend.
Correct.
You have a normal job, normal type of hours, right?
Correct.
Okay. Weekdays?
Correct.
Okay. Hopefully just weekdays, right? Showing you what's been marked is exhibit number 516. And I know it might be in a different form than usual, but in general, do you have an idea of what that is?
Yes.
What is that?
Snapchat messages.
And who are they with?
Chandler.
And Chandler's, to the best you can, I know these are, people make up names, but what was Chandler's Snapchat name?
Chazzle Dazzle.
Chazzle Dazzle. And significant parts of this are redacted out. In the course of sending Snapchat, sometimes you send just, in general, people are sending pictures back and forth, and part of what we've done in this case is just redact any photographs that we really thought we could, right?
Correct.
Okay. I've kept one on, though, just to prove that's you, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is 516 Snapchat messages between July 1st and July 7th between you and Chandler?
Correct.
All right, I'll move 516 into evidence.
Any objection?
Same objection as the text messages.
Same ruling that it is received, may be published.
Okay. I need you to tell us about Snapchat. I don't know what everyone's understanding is. Everyone's of different ages. Some people have a Snapchat, some people don't. Just in general, what is Snapchat?
Snapchat is a social media app where you can send photos with titles, or you can send messages through the chat part of the app.
And what is one of the features of Snapchat that it's primarily known for that text messages maybe aren't?
They aren't generally saved.
They delete, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a way to manually save messages or photos on Snapchat?
Yes.
And is it easy or is it hard?
I find it easy.
What do you do?
You hold down the text and you select save.
And if you save the message, if you're communicating right now with Snapchat with one of your friends and they send you a snap, if you click on it and look and do nothing, that message will delete, right?
Sometimes.
Okay. But if you could manually save it, right? By putting your finger down and saving it.
Correct. Or if you change the settings to delete within 24 hours.
Right. Sometimes when you snapped with Chandler, one or both of you would save the messages.
Correct.
And those messages are what we're looking at here, right?
Correct.
Okay. Would you say Snapchat is your primary form of communication with Chandler?
One of them.
Okay. So I'm going to display 516, and we'll start going through some things here in a second. But we left one photograph on just to prove that's you, right?
Correct.
Okay. And we'll redact the rest. And for obvious reasons, we don't want everything coming out. But on July 1st of 2021 at 7:11, you get a message, right, from Chandler?
Correct.
What does it say?
How do you sleep?
And you say, I slept good. How did you sleep? And how does he respond?
I hardly slept.
Okay. He gives you kind of a emoji face. You say, I'm sorry, B. Why? Can you read Chandler's message back to you after you say why?
I don't know. Stuff hasn't really been going well for me lately, so I'm trying to plan for the next thing to fuck me over.
So the first message Kat gets from Chandler when she wakes up is another instance of emotional manipulation from him. The very first thing he thought to do when she told him that she was awake is to remind her how his life is horrible, how everything is going so poorly, and put her in the position to try and comfort him. Meanwhile, his life was fine. He hadn't gone to school or work in months. His parents spent the majority of their free time taking care of him, and they haven't enforced their one rule about him having to pay rent since he moved back home. And his girlfriend was more than willing to do whatever it was he asked her to do. He spent his days online playing video games, freeloading off of all of his friends and family members, and pretending to be injured. And other than his dad's annoyance over his transcripts not being provided, everything was going amazing for Chandler. He was living his dream. But he needed more. He needed everyone around him to pity him, to tell him what a great guy he was, how they would love him even if he never did anything to improve himself or to support them. He wasn't interested in uplifting or supporting the people around him even emotionally. He just wanted their support and was willing to hurt them to get it. We have little commentary for the next portion of the video, so we're going to skip past it. A link will be left down below to the original uploads. That way you could watch the testimony in its entirety. From this point on, we will be cutting out portions of the testimony where we have nothing to add.
And what were you and Chandler going to do?
Hang out, have a sleepover.
Were you excited about this?
Yes.
How long it had been at that time that Chandler had been in this being kind of grounded state where you hadn't seen him a lot?
About 2 weeks.
Okay. As you left work that day, did you have to go to Target to pick some stuff up?
Yes.
What were you picking up in general? Maybe I'll ask a better question. Was it groceries?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you it's been marked as Exhibit 525. What is that?
Pork chops, oat milk, cheese.
Sure. Is this from the Hilldale Target?
Yes.
Do you do the pickups at Target, or do you go in and shop?
I do the pickups.
Okay. So like a lot of people during COVID, you've done the pickup thing where you order ahead?
Correct.
Okay. And I'll move 525 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
It is received. It may be published.
Not crazy exciting for everyone, but it's the Hilldale Target, picked up at 529. Hilldale here in Madison, kind of down University Avenue, right?
Correct.
All right. Got a couple things, some pork chops, some oat milk, some cheese, normal stuff, right?
Correct.
But you didn't stop there. You went to another Target, didn't you?
Yes.
How does that work that you end up at 2 Targets in the same day?
If something isn't available at one Target, I will order it at another and then go pick it up from there.
Okay. So you went to multiple Targets.
Correct.
And so there we see Madison East Target at 637, right?
Correct.
You got a watermelon.
Yep.
Awesome. Were you taking these things over to the Halderson house?
Some of them, yes.
Okay. And when you pick things up at Target, you've done this a lot, I would imagine.
Very often.
Do they put any sort of stickers or markings on the bag to indicate this is for you?
Yes.
In general, just describe what goes on those bags.
It is a barcode for them to scan after they receive my order, and it has my first initial and last name.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked in this case as exhibit number 526. Maybe some more messages, but take a look at that. Does that appear to be text messages between you and Chandler there that day on the 2nd, July 2nd?
Correct.
Starting in the morning.
Yes.
Okay, I'll move 526 into evidence.
Subject to the standing objection, it is received.
And so, in fact, kind of first thing maybe you say to him that day is you got to go to both Targets for your groceries.
Yep.
That's 923. And then you're going to take some of them to your mom's.
Yes.
Tell me just real quick, and we're not going to talk about addresses, but general living situation at the time, back in July of last year. Did you live with your mom?
No.
Did you have an apartment?
Yes.
And would you sometimes stay at your apartment?
Yes.
Sometimes at your mom's? Mm-hmm. Okay. Chandler says okay at 9:23. And then on July 2nd at 9 in the morning, after you talk about Target, can you read that message from Chandler to you?
Don't rush. I have tons of chores they are having me do.
You say okay, and then you talk about what you're having for dinner. Maybe burgers, maybe chili.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Talk more about what you're going to have for dinner. He says, I don't know. What would you like? And you say, depends on how long we see each other, talking about, in general, what you're going to do. and what you're going to eat, you read what Chandler sent you on the 2nd of July at just before 10 in the morning at 9:58.
We could do dinner tonight, and you can come over in the morning again and stay till Sunday night.
Did that message strike you as odd, of coming over, leaving, and coming back?
Yes.
Why?
Because I was already going to be there, and I thought our plan was for the whole weekend.
Okay. So he says that you could come over for dinner, and then in between, what's not written, but your impression was you'd leave and then come back the next day.
Can you say that a little louder, please?
Sure. Was it your impression from this message that Chandler was telling you that you would leave that night and come back the next morning?
Correct.
Okay. So he says that, and then he says, like dinner plus the sex to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you ask him, why leave and come back if I'm just going to stay? And can you read Chandler's response?
So I can get some chores done.
Did you know what chores he was talking about at this time?
I don't recall.
I'm going to show you another exhibit marked 527 in this case. Just in general, do those appear to be more text messages between the two of you on July 2nd?
Yes.
I'll move 527 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
They are received. They may be published.
Lots has been established between when we last left off and now, with the prosecution laying a good amount of groundwork down, showing that Chandler had premeditated his parents' death, that he continued to lie and emotionally manipulate Kat, and more. But we are pausing here to note how uninterested Chandler seems at this moment. Though half his face is covered by a mask, he seemingly has no emotional reaction to watching the woman he purported to love be publicly interrogated this way. Their sex life was just brought up, something that would obviously upset anyone, and he has no reaction. He's not embarrassed, he's not ashamed, he just is, for lack of a better word. Throughout the trial, Chandler showed no real emotion. His parents' dismembered, dead bodies were publicly displayed and discussed. His lies were exposed in open court, and he just sat there, as if he was a member of the public, watching this happen to someone else. Hearing Kat's testimony, listening to how upset, embarrassed, and hurt she is, stands in stark contrast to Chandler, who cannot even pretend to care when his life hangs in the balance. And it's this emotionality that likely drew Chandler to Kat. She cared so deeply for other people, he knew that he could probably bend that in his favor. He knew how to parrot this back to her, how to make her believe that they were on the same page, and feign that he felt the same way that she did. Once he got her to see him in that light, he knew that no matter what he did, or how he lied to her, she would probably take his side, and give him as many chances as he needed. Again, I'm going to skip forward a bit, as the next section of the testimony is the prosecution laying more groundwork and reading out text messages from Chandler and Kat from that weekend. Most of the messages involved them talking about the food they were going to make for dinner that night, which, as you can imagine, is not the most riveting thing in the world.
When you get over to Chandler's house, do you take the bags of groceries inside, or do they go inside at some point?
Yes.
And the hydrogen peroxide?
Yes.
Okay. And the Swiffer?
Yes.
When you first go in the house that day, did you notice anything off?
There was a smoky smell.
Okay. Did Chandler tell you more about, did he explain why there was a smoky smell?
Because he was playing catch with Rizzo in the house, and the glass shattered in the fireplace, and so the smell got into the home.
Rizzo is a dog, right?
Correct, the border collie.
How did Chandler say the glass broke with the dog?
He was throwing the ball in the house.
Okay. Did you look into that any further? Did you go over to that fireplace and poke around?
No.
Was there, in fact, a glass panel broken on it?
Yes.
This was one of Chandler's lies, meant to cover up what he had done to his parents the night before. When we stated that a home's fireplace could not destroy a human body, we left out the reasoning. The heat that would be needed to incinerate a human is immense, far larger than any regulation fireplace could handle. But Chandler didn't know that. He thought fire equals burning, and therefore his parents' bodies would be eliminated with minimal effort. After dismembering the two people who had taken care of him his entire life, he placed portions of their remains in the home fireplace, fanned the flames, and attempted to get the fire to the point of incineration. However, he was only successful in causing a small-scale explosion in the home, which broke the glass fire gate. This caused an injury to his foot, one of the only real injuries he would ever obtain, and caused the home to fill with black smoke. The small-scale explosion was caught on one of his neighbor's security cameras, which gave the police the exact time frame when this happened. But put yourself in Kat's shoes. As far as she knows, he had spent the entire day laboring at the behest of his parents. They went on their regular 4th of July vacation and left him a list of chores to do. Despite his injury and the fact that he couldn't so much as sit in a well-lit room without getting a massive migraine, his parents had practically forced him to clean the entire home and do hard labor. Then when she arrives, she sees that he is even more injured, and the home is filled with smoke, and tells her that during a routine game of fetch, he shattered the fireplace gate. Based on everything he had already lied about, his physical well-being and ability to care for himself after the fall, she would have immediately believed him. Of course he accidentally broke the fireplace gate. He can barely stand up on his own without assistance. Obviously, he injured himself on the broken glass. He had overexerted himself doing the household chores. It was likely shocking to her that he wasn't more injured.
What were your plans that day when you left early? It was a Saturday. Now we're into July 3rd.
My plans for the day?
Yeah, what was your general plans?
Go to my mom's, hang out with the dogs, Chewbacca and Muffin. See my brother and have Chandler come over later.
And that night, what were you going to do?
See the fireworks with my brother.
Okay. That day when you left, were you aware of what Chandler's plans were?
To do chores.
He had mentioned chores a couple times. What was your understanding of chores? Did he tell you?
I don't remember.
I'm going to show you. Actually, I already did. 531's received into evidence at this point.
Yes.
Okay. You're texting Chandler in the morning. First one, 7:32. You say breakfast burrito. What was this in reference to?
What we were going to eat when he came over later.
Okay. Something you were going to make or something like that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you read his message for us?
Sounds good. I'm doing shit kind of slowly, to be honest. I'm kind of sore.
Okay. That's at 7:46. You say, I could have helped you this morning?
Yes.
What was that in reference to?
Doing his chores.
Okay. Did he ask you to help him?
No.
Okay. And why did you send that message that you would have helped him?
Since I thought he was having a hard time with his legs and the injury, I could have helped him get it done easier and it wouldn't have been as hard for him.
He responds, 7:47. Can you read his response?
Yeah, I know. I'll be right back. I'm going to the dump.
You read your response to that at 7:48.
B, did you load the card by yourself? You can barely walk. I should have at least helped you with that.
Chandler tell you what he was taking to the dump?
I don't remember.
Pausing for just a moment, it's important that you remember that despite these messages and Chandler's insistence, he was completely able-bodied. Even if his parents had left a long list of chores for him to do, he could have easily accomplished them in a day or so. But they hadn't. Kat was supremely concerned about his health and well-being. Krista would even go through the effort of making sure every room in the house was dark enough for him before he could potentially enter them, in the hopes that he could be able to move around more and interact with the rest of the family. Yet, even after death, Chandler found new ways to discourage and disrespect his parents' memories. By telling Kat that his parents had gone away for the weekend, leaving him, the recently physically disabled son, alone in the home to do manual labor, she would naturally have a negative view of Krista and Bart. How could they realistically think that Chandler, the boy who could barely walk and do anything except play video games, could load his car full of heavy materials to take to the dump? How could they insist that he make his way through the house, cleaning every little thing, when he couldn't be in most rooms with natural sunlight? Chandler amplified this viewpoint by repeatedly mentioning how much of these chores had taken out of him, and how he was sore after. His need for pity is truly remarkable, and the fact that he managed to find new ways to disparage his parents after dismembering them is disgusting.
At some point he texts you, though, at 7:49. What does he say?
Never mind, it's closed.
And you reference it's the holiday weekend.
Correct.
At some point, there's a series of messages from you, and then this one comes at 8:38. What do you say there?
Hey, did you pass out?
That's a question mark. Why would you send a message like that, or why did you send a message like that?
I was worried because of the head injury. If he's overexerting himself, he might push himself too hard and pass out.
Okay. And you had sent him a series of messages that he hadn't responded to. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, that morning, when you left the house early, you've already testified that he was going to do chores, and then there was some text about the dump. Did Mr. Halderson say he was going anywhere else that you knew of that morning?
Not at that time.
Did he say anything to you about going to Fleet Farm, that's kind of farm supply store out near Windsor, that morning?
Not that I recall.
Did you know he was going there?
No.
I'll move to display 530.
You may.
Is that Chandler walking into Fleet Farm?
Yes.
And if that was a screenshot of a video taken that morning just after you left, you don't know anything about why he'd be there, right?
No.
Okay.
Bill.
At some point that day, after you left, did you notice that Chandler was did you look at his Snapchat map to look at where he was?
Yes.
And did you become worried or concerned in some way?
Yes.
Showing it's been marked as exhibit number 532. What is that?
A screenshot of Chandler by the Wisconsin River.
Okay. And how's he labeled? What's his name there?
Hubby,
And what time is that?
8:58.
Okay. I think previously I said the second, I meant the third. We're now into Saturday, but was this taken on Saturday morning?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you take this screenshot of Chandler's location?
I didn't know why he was there, and so I was curious.
Did you know where this location was?
Yes.
And how did you know where this location was?
I've been there before with Chandler.
Tell us about it.
It's a little spot where we can park our car and walk down to the Wisconsin River for swimming.
How many times do you think you've been there?
Two or three times.
move to publish 532.
You may. Was it received? Okay.
Is this that screenshot?
Yes.
And that's the location, right?
Yes.
What did you do when you saw that?
Pardon?
Yeah, what did you do when you saw that location? You took a screenshot, did you do anything else with that information?
I asked him what he was doing there.
Okay. And what did he respond?
He was going to pick up CBD and he was passing through there.
He was passing through? Did you try to call him?
Yes.
Okay. Were you able to talk to him?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall anything else from that conversation about what he said or why he was where he was?
He was picking up CBD for the pain. He didn't want to tell me that he was picking up CBD because he was scared I was going to be disappointed in him.
By this point, you might have noticed a pattern with Chandler's lies. Whenever he is caught out doing something that he wasn't supposed to be doing, like trying to discard portions of his family members' bodies, he will create a lie that makes the person being lied to feel bad about their actions, even when they have done nothing wrong. In this instance, Chandler went to the river to leave portions of his mother and father in a place that he frequented. He thought that it was private enough that they wouldn't be found, but was personal enough that he could come and visit like he had in the past. But when Kat grew concerned over why he was so far from home, when he had told her repeatedly that he was physically unable to drive following his head injury, he told her that he had gone to pick up CBD in that area and didn't want to disappoint her. His excuse was that he was picking up a medical product for his injury, and believed that she would think less of him for it. Imagine if a partner or friend of yours said the same thing to you. They had gone through a traumatic few months, were injured to the point of losing their mobility, along with some of their cognitive function, and are reasonably depressed. Most of your communication back and forth is them discussing this sudden shift, and how upset it makes them. And when they finally tell you of something that they're doing to treat this, they add that they originally didn't want to inform you, because they thought you would be disappointed in them. They didn't want to do something that could inevitably help them get better, for fear you would be upset. Again, all of Chandler's lies are intended to make the person feel horribly about themselves and think the world of him. They're all meant to make the people around him, the ones he was adamant he loved, look and feel horrible, while maintaining his shiny veneer.
And around that time that you took that screenshot, was that when all of these messages were being sent that we looked at in this exhibit where no one was responding to you? Ending with, hey, did you pass out?
That was before I took the screenshot.
Right. Same morning though?
Same morning, yes.
Were you having trouble communicating with Chandler that morning between 8 and 9, essentially?
Yes.
Okay. Prior to, well, I said a different way. When was the last time you were at that location, that out by the Wisconsin River with Chandler, approximately?
That summer with his friend Smith.
Is that Andrew Smith?
I don't know his first name. He always just went by Smith.
Okay. What was your understanding of how Chandler knew this Smith guy?
They were video game buddies.
Pausing for just a second, I highly recommend watching Andrew Smith's testimony on this case. Smith was one of the people Chandler played online games with, and his time on the stand is very funny to watch. He is a very direct person, and it makes his back and forth with both of the attorneys in this case extremely fun, which is strange to say, as we are talking about a horrific murder. But it does alleviate the tension a little bit. I'll leave a link in the description box down below.
Sure, that's been marked in this case is exhibit number 536, and I'll show you 537. It's true. 536, is that another set of messages between you and Chandler that day, July 5th?
Correct.
What is 535? What is that?
Oh, sorry. It's a screenshot of UW clinic.
Okay. And did you take that?
Yes, I did.
In relation to what? Why did you take this screenshot?
That's where Chandler said he was going to have his appointment.
Before continuing, we stated earlier that most people cannot understand how Chandler got away with lying to everyone in his life. It's because when most people lie, they don't go to the lengths that Chandler would. When the majority of people try to sell falsehoods to others, it's in the heat of the moment. They say that they did something they obviously didn't do. They pretend to know more about a subject, or they make up a fanciful scenario that most people understand is not possible. But Chandler's lies were well researched. When he fell and hit his head, he knew the symptoms he wanted to act out. He had researched head injuries leading to physical disabilities, and then began self-reporting them. But that wasn't all. He researched clinics and doctors in the area who would be able to help with head injuries like the one he was pretending to have, as well as make fake appointments and talk to people in his life about them. And of course, their cherry on top is pretending to go to these appointments. During these times, he would either turn his phone off so that Kat could not see where he was via his Snapchat location, or he would actually go to these places and just fucking stand there, knowing that his location would verify his story. He did the same thing with all of his lies, so that it would seem almost stupid to believe that he wasn't being genuine.
For that day.
Okay. I'll move 536 and 535 into evidence.
Any objection other than the standing objection as to the texts?
No objection.
They are received.
So we're still on that day, July 5th. But we're in the afternoon, and you text me, can you read that last one?
Text me when you get to your appointment.
And we're about 1:30, aren't we?
Yes.
Chandler says, yes, dear. Then a series of messages starting at 1:40. You say, essentially. 1:40 again, I love you. It's going to be okay. Can you read what Chandler says?
Either way, you and me are going to be happy.
You say?
Very true.
And then at 2 o'clock, 2:01 exactly, Chandler says what?
Made it a bit ago and checked in.
What was your understanding of where he had gone?
To the location that I had screenshotted for his appointment.
And why again did you take this screenshot for Chandler's appointment?
Because I was trying to leave work early to be able to take him myself.
Okay. But you didn't take him that day, did you?
No.
So I'm showing, I'll move to publish 535 if I haven't.
You may.
Okay. You looked up UW Health on Science Drive.
Correct.
How did you get this location, or how did you know this was the location you'd be going to?
Chandler told me it was on Science Drive.
Okay. At that point, after he says he made it, checked in, at just after 2, what does he say?
Be right back.
You say, you got this. Yeah. You ask him about what you're doing later, 2:19, but then Chandler sends you a message. What does that say?
Just need you to know because I have horrible reception.
Okay. Then it was sent again. Does that look right?
Yes.
Okay, and just read that again if you could.
Just need you to know because I have horrible reception.
Okay. Your understanding at that time is that he was at the UW Health Hospital on Science Drive, or the clinic?
Correct.
You respond, okay. Then what do you say there?
Do they not? I meant to say, do they not have Wi-Fi?
Okay. What do you say after that?
We can snap if that's easier.
Why would that be easier?
Because they generally have Wi-Fi at all UW Health clinics, and so if he doesn't have reception on his phone, we could still snap with the Wi-Fi.
Now, we're talking about text, you're texting, and now you're texting about snapping, but in the realm of this conversation, a couple questions. When you're texting someone, just on the normal Apple iPhone, and you're texting someone, absent something crazy, you're not seeing their location, at least in your experience, right?
On the Apple location?
In these text messages, this isn't how you looked at where Chandler's location is, right? It was Snapchat.
Correct.
Okay. So if someone, in your experience, wasn't on Snapchat or able to use Snapchat because they didn't have Wi-Fi or a signal, would you be able to tell where their location is?
No.
Can you turn off on Snapchat the ability of someone to see your location?
Yes.
At 2:23, after arriving at the doctor, what does Chandler say to you?
No connection to even load Snapchat, and no Wi-Fi. But I can still get your iMessages. No connection to even load Snapchat, and no Wi-Fi.
That make sense to you?
The texts, or?
That he'd be able to get messages but wasn't getting Wi-Fi or didn't have any service for Snapchat?
No.
Generally, in your relationship with Chandler or anyone else that you've been involved with, or any of your Snapchat friends that you follow their location, are you generally able to see their location when they're in normal cities like Madison?
Yes,
And you work in the healthcare field, right?
I do.
Generally, Wi-Fi available at most of those places?
Yes.
In fact, what do you say to Chandler at 2:24?
Weird, they all have it. Have it. But maybe it's your carrier.
What does Chandler say?
I'll try and get it on. I'll try and get it on.
Again, we need to point out why Chandler's messages are sending duplicates, because it shows the lengths he will go to supplement his lies. He is telling Catherine that he has poor reception and that his health clinic has no Wi-Fi, meaning that while he is there, he will be unable to answer her messages. His reception is obviously fine, and if he were at the clinic, he'd be able to connect with their Wi-Fi without issue. But he doesn't want to respond to Kat. He wants some time to himself so he can invent new lies to make her feel horrible. But in lieu of simply telling her that he has bad reception, he sends the text messages twice. That way, if she suspects that he was lying, she has some kind of proof that he wasn't.
So around that time that Chandler said he was going back out to the farm, he was stressed, I think you identified 540, which was another set of messages from that same day. If I haven't, I'll move 540 into evidence.
I think that you have.
Okay.
And which day, if you can restate the day.
Sure. So we're on the 7th.
Thank you.
Can you read the first message we have on here from Chandler on the 7th around 11:22?
Going to police.
What does he say next?
Can I have $5 for a soda and chips?
And what did you respond?
I don't have $5, B.
Okay. Going to police, around that time, was there a discussion again of why he was going to the police?
Yes, to report his parents missing.
Okay. At this point, what had he told you about his parents being missing? So you knew they were scheduled to come back, but what did you learn since that would cause Chandler to go to the police?
His mom had an appointment for her cancer, and it was very important, so it was very unusual for her to miss that.
Did you have a conversation with Chandler about whether he should or shouldn't make a missing persons report for his parents?
Yes.
What did you tell him?
I said he should. They've been gone for so long and he hasn't heard from them.
Did he say anything about what was going into his decision on whether to report them missing or not report them missing yet?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Did Chandler tell you anything about why he hadn't made a missing persons report at that time?
Like until then, like
Yeah.
why that day?
Yeah.
Because he thought they were just running late, and the deciding factor to report them missing was his mom missing that appointment.
Now, the next day, July 8th, Thursday, you were supposed to go to work, right?
Correct.
That night, the police had been involved in Chandler's house and talking to people, right?
Correct.
Were you one of those people talked to by the police?
On Thursday?
Yeah.
Can you restate the question? I apologize.
No, you're doing great. Did you go with Chandler to report his parents missing?
I did not go with him to report them missing.
Okay. Do you know, were you over at Chandler's house when the police came over that night?
On Wednesday?
Yeah.
I was not there.
Okay. The next day, you went to work, and tell me about work that day.
I was very emotional and upset and just very distraught, and I just couldn't be there because I was really worried about his parents. And so I talked to my bosses about leaving early so I could go be at the house with Chandler and wait until we...
Once more, we have to point out the stark contrast between Kat's reaction and Chandler's, both during the testimony as well as when Bart and Krista were reported missing. As Kat recalls what occurred, she begins to break down because her boyfriend's parents were important to her. They were her friends. They spent a significant amount of time together, and even though Chandler tried to poison her against them, she still loved them deeply. Meanwhile, Chandler has been stoic the entire time she has been on the stand, and is either taking notes or doodling. There is also the matter that Kat had to tell Chandler to report his own parents missing after they seemingly failed to return from their cabin. She had been more concerned with his parents' lack of communication while they were away because Krista would text Chandler constantly. Earlier in Kat's testimony, she recalled how Krista would send the pictures of the lake, as well as the cabin and various things she thought they would like. Even when Chandler was healthy, she was always looking after and talking to her son, but that weekend, she was alarmingly quiet. Chandler attempted to write off Kat's increasing concerns, telling her that they had spotty reception at the cabin, that his parents needed a break from his medical needs, and were taking time to themselves. But Kat still noted their lack of communication was strange. When they failed to return home, she was the one to press him to speak to the police, because she cared about them, unlike Chandler.
About how long did you make it at work that day before you left?
I was there max 30, 40 minutes.
Okay. And where did you go after you left?
I stopped at my mom's home to grab groceries so I could go to the house and cook for Chandler while we waited.
Okay. When you got to the house, was anyone else there?
When I pulled up, Chandler was outside talking to reporters.
At any point, did any other members of Chandler's family show up at the house?
Yes.
Who?
Mitch and his fiance.
Did Mitch stay outside or did he come in?
He came in the home.
And what did Mitch do?
He walked around the house trying to see if there was anything that Chandler maybe missed about his parents leaving.
As Mitch walked around the house, what did Chandler do?
He followed him.
He followed him?
Yes.
Later that day, you were asked to go to the police station downtown, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And was Chandler asked to do the same?
Yes.
You were brought down here by the police, right?
Yes.
Were you in the same car or different cars when they brought you down here?
I was in a...
You're doing okay.
I was in a different squad car than Chandler.
Okay. Did you go into an interview room with the police?
Yes, I did.
And did they ask you questions?
Yes.
Do you know about how long you were down here that night?
A couple hours.
Did you answer all of their questions?
Yes.
At that point, and I'm asking about what your mindset was at the time. Did you believe that you or Chandler had done anything wrong at that point?
No.
When we covered Kat's original police interview, we discussed how she unintentionally provided evidence of Chandler's guilt. Now it's extremely likely that this evidence would have been provided if she knew that her boyfriend had killed his parents, because she seems like an extremely morally just person who wants to help everyone. But at the time of the interview, she not only believed that Chandler couldn't be involved, she was certain that she had proof that he wasn't. She had spent the majority of the weekend with him, and she knew he had been in the area, whereas his parents had been at their cabins. Not only that, she knew that he was physically incapable of harming anyone due to his injuries that she felt like he had provided tangible proof of. So when the police asked her how they spent their time and what he did when he was away from her, she happily showed them their text messages, the screenshots of his location from Snapchat, and all the evidence that would later be used to prove his guilt. She believed genuinely that she was exonerating him, when she was actually doing the exact opposite.
Okay. Were you emotional during that interview?
Yes.
How do you express your emotions sometimes?
I cry a lot, or if I get too anxious or emotional, I start vomiting.
Those things were happening that night?
Yeah.
Police asked at times to look at your phone and photographs and things of that sort?
Pardon?
And did you show them anything they wanted to see?
Anything they wanted, yeah, I gave to them.
Why was it important to you to cooperate at that time?
Because I just believed his parents were missing. And I just want them to be found.
So you can tell us if you need a break, or if you want to keep going. I'm almost done, but it's up to you.
Well, you can keep going.
Okay. Were there any of the police questions that you would not answer?
Not that I can recall.
And did the police contact you after that night to talk again?
Yes.
And did you fully cooperate and speak with them that time?
Yes.
And several times, law enforcement and other people have contacted you to speak about this. And have you cooperated all of those times?
Yes.
You've met with me personally a couple of times, correct?
Yes.
Have you always, in the course of this investigation, done your best to tell the absolute truth of what happened?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm almost done, and I have to ask. I'm asking a couple questions, and I hope you appreciate why I'm asking them. Were you the person who was with Chandler the most from, let's say, the July 1st, all the way through when you were in the police station getting interviewed on the 8th? Were you maybe the person that, at least in your knowledge, were you the person who was maybe with him the most?
Yes.
And were you the person who, other than Chandler, was based on your knowledge, in the Halderson home the most?
Yes.
Prior to eventually being told what happened by police and perhaps the defense investigators or myself, did you know that Bart and Krista Halderson had died?
No.
And Kat, did you have absolutely anything to do with cleaning anything up or their disappearance?
No.
Okay. No further questions, okay?
Okay.
The next portion of the footage is the cross-examination, done by Chandler's counsel. The case against Chandler is so robust that there is very little that the defense can do to try and assert his innocence, besides attempting to discredit the evidence against him. In fact, the redirect is so short that we have opted to not include it, because there is very little to be said about it. While Chandler would have been deemed the primary suspect without Kat's help, Bart and Krista's bodies might not have been found, and Chandler might have gotten away with his parents' murder. The evidence that Kat was able to provide led to the police making multiple discoveries, and she should be tremendously proud of herself. However, it's unlikely that she feels that. While we obviously don't know her, a significant portion of her life was spent trusting someone who lied about everything in his life. She was made to trust and feel close to a person who never existed, who would have killed his parents if the opportunity arose, and that kind of wound probably sticks with a person. As we stated earlier, the public's response to this case has always been one of dismay. How could the people in his life not know he was lying? But it's our sincere hope that with this video and the others, that we have shown how that is the case. How Chandler went above and beyond to fabricate an entire existence that was impossible, and how he personally victimized everyone in his life. If you've made it to this portion in the video, thank you so much for watching. This video was a long-time recommendation from viewers like you, and we hope that we were able to cover this topic with nuance and grace. If you have any notes, complaints, or just want to leave your own case recommendation, leave a comment down below, or email us at dreading.official@gmail.com. Have a great day, and remember to stay safe.